UFO, go figure. 18 years ago, the closest thing I've ever experienced to extraterrestrial, and there still may potentially be a good reason for what happened, but I just can't think of one. A friend and I were hanging out late night at a skate park located inside a larger park. We weren't skateboarders, we just liked the quiet, and we were both night owls. We would come here sometimes, have a drink while lying on one of the ramps, and just hang out for a while, stargazing. This one night, my friend pointed out a star that was moving at an odd speed. It took me a while to pinpoint where he was pointing, but once I caught it, I couldn't believe I missed it. Not fast enough to be shooting. In fact, the speed was similar to that of a plane, and we assumed it must just be that, a single visible light from a plane. When the star suddenly shifted 90 degrees, however, we both let out one of those, in disbelief. It would coast along for a bit again, then every so often make one of those sharp-angled turns. After a few minutes of watching the star move in impossible ways, it made one final snap turn, then shot off like a shooting star and disappeared. Did we just see a UFO? Yeah, I think we did. Ghostly break-in. So here starts the truly spooky stuff. If you made it thus far and are still interested, these are the things that give me that uneasy feeling and cold shivers when I think or talk about them. Again, let's start with the easiest. 13 years ago, I had just bought a condo with my girlfriend at the time, but it was still being built. Word of advice, don't ever do that. In the meantime, we had been asked to house-sit her grandfather's house until it was ready. The gentleman had recently passed away from skin cancer. It was quite a sad experience for everyone in her family, and I had met the man only a few times. He was friendly and funny, though, and I was sad I hadn't got to know him better. One day, I was sitting on my computer in the basement, home alone in dead silence, of course, when I hear a window shatter above me in the kitchen. Clear as bloody day, just the smash of glass and the tinkering of shards hitting the floor. There's no pets, no glasses left on the counter. This was someone who knew the owner had passed away and was trying to rob the place. I was angry, paired with equal amounts of being terrified, and ran upstairs with the only thing I'd find as a weapon on my way, a small plank of wood. Nothing, and no one was there. The doors were still locked, the windows intact, nothing out of place. I ran around and investigated every nook and cranny, every window, checked the outside. Nothing. The shivers came at the revelation that the noise wasn't an actual event and something else. All I can say is thank God it was midday and not the middle of the night. I later Googled, or at the time maybe it was still called Metacrawler, about the supernatural in sounds of glass. I can cite sources now obviously, but do recall reading that it's a common sound to hear in spooked houses. Not rattling chains or moaning, but glass breaking. Still gives me the willies. A church, a school, and a bad joke. 18 years ago, there's a lot of story here, so I'm going to summarize the best I can. A friend of a friend lived in the basement in his mom's house. We were teenagers, that's what we did. The weird part about his house, however, was the history. It had a plaque by the front door as a landmark. It was the first school in his town when it was established. How that worked, I don't know. It seriously was just the size of a regular suburban home, but I suppose depending on how long ago it was built, perhaps that was the norm, and sat behind the lot of an old church. The quick history I recall is this. It was a school, it burnt down, it was rebuilt, and became the dwelling of a pastor and his family of the church that was built next to the school. Fast forward to the present, and the church still stands next to its offering service, but now this guy lived in the house behind it. The house is creepy. It's old and creaks with every step, and only gets worse when you go into the basement. One door in his basement dwelling literally just opened to a small 5x5 space with normal height ceiling but no flooring, just dirt and much too small to be a closet. The framing was slanted down here too, so when you enter the main living room door from the stairs, the door automatically and slowly closes shut behind you. That's important information. I wasn't particularly close with this person, but I was enjoying hanging out with him and my buddy, especially since I was fascinated by how creepy his house was. I've always loved this stuff. He mentioned a video he wanted to show us, and while his computer booted up, he'd show me the rest of the basement. My friend mentioned this guy talks about ghostly stuff happening all the time, and I didn't believe him. I was also kind of a douchey teenager, so when he showed me his bedroom and stated, "Oh, is this where all the kids burnt to death?" he was not very impressed. To my knowledge, no kids died in the fire. I assumed it was a tasteless yet harmless joke. We went back to the computer, and he went to load the video to show us when the lights and TV began flickering. I'm going to spoil it right there quickly. That was a prank. The idiot was kicking the power bar under the desk, and it was causing this, and my friend played along. I kind of laughed it off, but was sort of spooked, so I simply said, "Well, let's see this video, and then I should get going." That's when the computer locked up, and the door that always swings closed slowly opened until it was wide open. I gave a very clear, "Okay then, I'll just be going right now," and walked out, and the door swung slowly closed behind me as I left. My friend left too, and we drove around until the sun came up. He confessed that the flickering was a joke, but the rest of the stuff scared the crap out of him too, and that perhaps my joke was in a really poor taste. The guy that lived there didn't care. He said stuff happens all the time, so it's no big deal, but I wasn't keen on going back, to which I only did once with less angry but still unwelcome results. Recalling this event had me curious to learn more about the property, timeline, and people, but I don't think there'd be much to find. Emotional hacking. It gets bad now. Just recalling these two stories makes my eyes water. Even if I can't convey the terror I experienced in written form, I hope you get an idea of how absolutely bizarre and bone-chilling these events were to experience. 21 years ago, I was sitting with my girlfriend at the beach. It was about 45 to 60-minute drive down a small winding highway to get to the small waterfront district. Late evening, calm and warm air, and just the sound of water rolling in. We weren't talking, just sitting and cuddling while watching the water. This is incredibly tricky to explain, so I hope this makes sense. Something terrible had happened, something catastrophic, like that feeling you may have felt in your gut hearing about 9/11, or when you hear a description of a car in an accident and it matches that of someone you love and now they aren't answering the phone. A deep-rooted sense that something awful had just happened. I became convinced that either something incredibly bad had just happened or was going to happen, or someone I love had just died. The girlfriend didn't understand what I was talking about as I got increasingly upset and panicky, and then my eyes began tearing up. I explained that I don't know, I just know something's wrong. I have to leave right now. I have to find a phone and make sure everyone's alright. This was pre-cell phone time, of course. I still use pay phones. She got worried real quick and simply agreed. This is obviously very out of character for me. As we were driving down the highway back, the sickening feeling in my stomach kept growing and I felt positively ill. My eyes were just pouring tears and I felt like I was about to have a complete breakdown. I have to pull over. I can't drive. I feel sick. And began pulling over to the side of the road under a streetlight next to a telephone pole. Leaning against the pole was a man dressed all in black wearing a hoodie, standing under the light, and I assumed maybe waiting for a bus or a ride to show up. And given the urgency of my need to stop, I was going to be pulling up right alongside him. "This guy's going to think I'm nuts," or something along those lines I uttered as I began pulling over, doing a shoulder check and just trying to get the car safely to stop as soon as possible. "What guy?" she replied. "Him." And I trailed off. I sat on the side of the road staring at the pole and no person was there. There was no one around anywhere. Of course, my girlfriend was freaking out by now, which was quite a turn of events because the horrible feeling in my gut, the tears and panic all vanished as quick as a snap of the fingers. The only thing left was an incredibly deep shudder down my spine. She still recalls that event, brought it up a few years ago as we still talk, and how that was the weirdest thing she'd ever seen. But not quite as weird as the ghost who followed me home. 7 years ago. Again, a lot of backstory I'm going to quickly summarize. I worked in a group home at the time with 2 clients. We worked one-on-one with clients during the day, but the graveyard shift worked alone as the clients usually slept or were well behaved. I had befriended the full-time graveyard guy and thought I could prank him. Because I'm still kind of a douche that loves scaring people, I stuck one of those creepy noisemakers from ThinkGeek inside the top of the office door, the one that every so often makes a creepy little noise like a girl giggling, whispering, scratching, or a creak. The door was metal. It was also our safe room from the clients if things went completely bonkers and we needed to lock ourselves in, and the door had a hollow top that I slipped the prank toy into. For a few weeks, the staff began talking about strange, scary noises late at night, because of course the house was too loud during the day for anyone to hear it. Everyone began getting very freaked out, and I reveled in it like a true piece of crap, enjoying the fear of my friends and coworkers. Then one day I found the device smashed, sitting inside my office docket when I came in. I was clearly busted. My friend had been very methodical and logical about it. He timed the occurrences, and right before he assumed it was about to happen, he would listen intently, moving closer to the source over a few days until he found it. He thought it was hilarious, and the other staff not so much. Now, nothing crazy had ever happened in this house before the years we all worked there, aside from graveyard staff stating that they would occasionally hear what sounds like raccoons messing around in the attic, they hoped. For some reason, this jest of mine made a blip to whatever was out there and came in like a moth to flame. I'm working the evening until midnight. My other staff is done and gone home as their client is asleep, and it's now a countdown until I'm released by the graveyard staff, who just so happens to be my friend who found the device. Our office is on the top floor of a 2-story house and littered with security cameras inside every room but the bathrooms in the office. The property is a large lot with a wooden area behind it. Some mansions sit beside it, but a decent distance. It's quiet. My client's room is directly down the hall from the office. The doors stare at each other when closed, and the bathroom sits between the two in the hallway to one side, and the other an opening that leads to the rest of the upstairs. Aside from the one bedroom, the rest of the upstairs is hardwood floors. The office is the size of a small bedroom and has 3 of those standard computer chairs, the plush ones with the 5-wheeled arms at the base. I walked to my client's room in dead silence and told him it was time to brush his teeth. He came to the bathroom and we followed his nighttime routine, and he went back to his room to go to bed while I returned to the office. I was gone less than 2 minutes and was no more than 10 feet from the office. All the while, everything as quiet as you can possibly imagine. All the office chairs had been moved perfectly into the center of the room, facing inward. The legs of the chairs were all positioned in a way that they were touching, and my gut sank. The first thing I did is yell out my friend's name. I was angry. I stormed around the house, calling him out. "Where are you?" and the like. The clients were real champs and just stayed in their rooms despite my sudden disturbance. After I checked the doors and windows, I figured I'd just watch the cameras. I rewound the tapes and reviewed the events. I left the office, did the stuff, came back, then began charging about in a fury. There was nothing on any camera, nothing out of place, no person sneaking about. There's no access into the room from outside. It's screened off, and again the top floor with a sheer surface outside. These chairs are heavy and make a ton of noise every time they're moved on the hardwood. I heard no sound in the silence. I called my friend and began demanding he tell me how he did it. He was very good at playing stupid. "Do what?" he said. "Come on, man, you know. How do you do it?" After a bit, he confessed he was completely oblivious to what I was talking about and began live streaming me where he was, his garage at home, just leaving for work. Believe me when I say no one else would have conceived a revenge plan like this. The most annoying part being that people were mad, assuming I made it up trying to scare everyone again. How can I be so certain still that it wasn't someone else? Aside from all the aforementioned reasons that make it impossible, it's the fact that whatever did that lovely feng shui in the office followed me home that same night and woke me up at 2 a.m., spinning my office chair in a circle while my computer kept turning on and off rapidly. I did what I thought was best at that moment, which was to be devoid of any strong emotion, roll back over, pull up my blanket, and go back to sleep. Nothing ever happened at work or at my home after that night. Weird stuff happens to everyone, but I hope you got some enjoyment and intrigue from my little terrors. It's nothing amazing as far as some people's stories go, but I declare them 100% as truthful and accurate as memory allows. There's of course more interesting things to tell, but I've been writing for like 2 to 3 hours, and it's a good time to let myself slip into a good dream, which reminds me now of another awful story. I'm the Chancellor, President of my fraternity, Tau Epsilon Phi. Our house was built in 1886. It is supposedly haunted by a number of ghosts, and the stories have been talked about amongst brothers throughout the years since our chapter bought the house in 1967. The older stories and background can be found by searching Tau Epsilon Phi, Potsdam, New York hauntings. There are many links that will bring you to different pages that speak of the Sisson family that lived in the house originally and the real background of the supposed hauntings. I'm an engineering student at Clarkson University in Potsdam, New York. It's a college town where Greek life is very prevalent. I pledged this house because it was a great fit for me, and I fell in love with the history and beauty of the house. I was told it was haunted before I even pledged, but it didn't bother me because I'm not afraid of ghosts, nor had ever had a definitive experience. I pledged fall 2016 and started living in the house the semester after. It wasn't until the spring 2018 semester that I had my first real encounter that made me believe spirits are real. There are 14 bedrooms in the house. My room is the Chancellor's suite, which is the largest room and also has its own bathroom. Among multiple legends of the history of the house, the story to my room is this. Otis, an African-American servant who served for the Sisson family, the original owners of the property. The legend goes that there was a tunnel system underneath the property that led to the other Sisson houses in town. The Sisson family were very wealthy property owners in Potsdam in the mid to late 1800s. Otis got severely injured in a tunnel collapse, and George Wing Sisson, the father of the family, asked Otis what his dying wish was. Otis's final wish was to live like the Sissons until he passed. George allowed Otis to stay in his room, the Chancellor's suite, for his final days. Before he passed, his last words were, "I will protect this house. I will protect these walls." Otis is one of the many spirits to haunt the house and do things like open doors for people. This is the supposed legend surrounding him. There's no evidence that this story is real, but that's what I've been told. Now moving on to my story, I was sitting in my room with my girlfriend. We had no windows open and the door was closed. We were doing homework. I was at my desk right next to the door, and the only thing separating us was a trash can with a lid that would spin if you give it a slap. It was a lid where you could just push through the lid and drop your waste in the trash. We had no music playing, and out of nowhere it was like someone slapped the trash can lid hard, and the thing spun around 2 or 3 times. My girlfriend and I were shocked. She started screaming, and I was just looking at the lid try and settle down to equilibrium. There was no outside force that could have caused this. And here's my hypothesis on why it happened. Earlier that week, I was talking a lot about the ghost stories to my brothers and my girlfriend in the house. The spirits draw power from mentioning them or referring to them. I believe Otis, or whatever spirit it was, gained enough power to make a move like that and get me to realize that it was there and listening. I know this isn't a crazy story, but it was my first encounter with something unexplainable, especially after hearing stories from alumni that won't be mentioned in the stories you'll find on Google. I encourage you all to search my house on Google and read the tales behind the spirits that supposedly haunt my house. If you don't find them believable, you'll at least find the reads entertaining. Every fall, my fraternity and our sister sorority host a haunted house event where we do tours and tell the stories of the mansion on the hill, which is ironically our business name for utilities. I believe my house is haunted, but if you respect them, they will respect you. I don't feel a demonic presence, but I certainly know that there are spirits there. So last summer I got a job as a museum tour guide in rural Ontario. This job required me to show up for and prep the museum for a few hours, cleaning, organizing, etc. by myself, until a coworker showed up after lunch to help with giving tours to guests. The museum itself was a mansion built in the 1850s at the height of trade on the Great Lakes. The owner and his family lived there, and after his non-insured businesses burned and were destroyed, the house fell into disrepair until the 70s when it was rebuilt as a museum. Most of the family lived and died in the house until it was empty in the 1960s, which is when the town bought it. The first experience I was not able to explain. I was there by myself in the morning, as usual about a month into the job, vacuuming under the couches. This was in the living room of the house, and there was a table with the original kids' toys, games like checkers, chess, miscellaneous board games on it behind me. As I turned the vacuum off to slide the couch back, I heard several of the game pieces on the table move, like someone shuffled their hand on the box, looking for one specific piece, making them all rustle. It scared the crap out of me for sure. The second one I was able to explain. I was moving chairs in the front hall of the house when I heard distinct and loud footsteps above me. In the morning, all the doors would be locked, for my safety and so people couldn't snoop around the house. I went and checked, and all the doors were still locked. At this point, I actually said out loud, "Wow, okay, nice, part 2, here we go," and went upstairs slowly. When I got up there was nothing. Went back downstairs, and as I came around the corner, my heart stopped when there was someone there. Turned out it was the woman who was supposed to deliver my check, and she had locked the door behind her to go upstairs and look for me. The third and last one I could not explain, and this is the one that really got me. This particular morning, my coworker, I'll call him John, showed up in the morning to help with a bigger job. We had to clean the scary old cellar. But with the two of us, we got the confidence to do it, so we got started, me on the vacuum, John taking down cobwebs. Now, old houses like this usually have staircases that lead directly outside from the cellar, so the farmhands at the time could bring food that should be cooled directly to the cellar since there weren't fridges. I had to go up these stairs with the vacuum and clean up all the dirt and leaves that accumulated there, while John was on the complete other side of the cellar at least 50 feet from me. As I get halfway up the stairs, I feel like what feels like footsteps are behind me. You know, like how you can tell someone is in the room as they walk by. You can feel vibrations on the floor. Well, it felt like two shoes stopped and stomped directly one step behind me on the stairs, and I could have sworn I heard someone clearing their throat, as if I'm in the way of someone. So I turn off the vacuum and go back down the stairs and ask John if he was just behind me. There were cobwebs everywhere. He very well could have been, and I saw him still at the other side of the room. "Dude, you were behind me like 10 seconds ago." I received a "no?" with a confused look. So I basically said, "All right then," and went back up to where I was and started vacuuming again. I again felt like the same stomp of feet on the steps, this time in front of me, up a few steps. I looked around to see nothing again and just ignored it and kept going. Evidently whatever it was didn't like that, and I felt what I can only describe as a person brush past and push me out of the way towards the wall. Like not grabbing me, but it felt the same as someone just physically walking into me to push me out of the way. Not like a light push, but it threw its shoulder into me to push me aside as it continued down the stairs, and that's how I described it. Many of the other workers described experiences of their own, and when I started I was skeptical, but I really don't know how to explain the two. Your thoughts? My freshman year of college, I shared a dorm with one of my friends from home. We were both interested in the study abroad program at a certain school, and so we both ended up there. It was convenient and nice because we always had someone to talk to and didn't have to deal with staying with some rando while also adapting to our first year of college. Around Halloween, the parents of a mutual friend sent us some cute purple skull lights to hang in our dorms. They were the kind of string lights that were operated by batteries, and both of us taped them around the frames of our desks. They had different settings. They could be just on normally, could fade from brighter to dimmer, or could turn off and on at small set intervals. My roommates had another set. I don't remember how she got them, but she had a red set in addition to our matching purple ones. On many different occasions, we had gotten to our room and felt as though we had remembered to turn the lights off, but convinced ourselves that maybe we had forgotten or remembered doing it at a different time. That worked for a while until it happened again. Both of her sets and mine were on another day before we left to go on one of our Walmart trips after both of us were done with class. When we got back, the lights were off and neither of us had physically turned them off. The following day, the same thing happened, except only my set and one set of my roommate's lights were on instead of both. We checked the switches to see if there were any type of timer, but they were simple on-off switches. We then asked our RA, and she told us that absolutely nobody can obtain a key to our room, and that the only people who have a master key are the security department. Our door is always locked, and they have only ever turned on or off when both of us were out of the room. At this point, both of us were spooked, so I decided to email my old astronomy professor who was into paranormal investigations. He told me to put a piece of tape over the switch when it was in the off position to ensure that we really were not accidentally leaving the lights on, and then, in his words from the email, if the lights still turn on, you know something really odd is afoot. I followed his advice and it stopped. For a while. We decided to just take the lights down and keep them in our desks. Christmas rolled around and my roommate got more lights. The same thing happened. We didn't bother taping it that time because it became kind of amusing. I watched them turn off at an opportune moment while we were watching a horror movie in which a character cut a power surge. Seems the ghosty had a sense of humor. But then we returned once to see that the magnets on a refrigerator were messed with too, all upside down and later all crooked and angled the same way, and my alarm clock fell seemingly without reason in the middle of the night. I tried to look up about anything about deaths in the dorms. My college was built in 1812, but I didn't find anything suggesting that there might be ghosts lingering around. To this day, I don't know why that happened in 136 Skeeth. Hey friends, thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. If you got a story, be sure to submit them to my subreddit, r/LetsReadOfficial, and give and receive feedback from the community, and maybe even hear it featured here on the channel. And grab early access to all future narrations for just $1 a month on Patreon, and maybe even pick up some Let's Read merch on Spreadshirt.com. Links in the bio. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you again soon.